do they have a map or not? Maybe even where you just were, right, on the deed restriction part. Where were you? Yeah. Here. So we're going to do a couple of things. If you sold a house in 2016, I still beg you to please take the list of the houses that you sold and go do what it is that I'm about to do. We're going to take Kenny and Mary Ann's list here of houses that they sold, and I'm going to check something. The first house they sold was 805 LaGreen, and they sold that house for $450,000. So I'm checking the 2017 tax records, and it shows me up above here that they now have, go back up, that they have homestead exemption for 2017. Great thing. You'd be surprised the number of people that don't. Brandon is selling 1815 Ashland. We did not represent those people. They have lived there for 4 years, and we go and look today as we're selling, they had never applied for homestead exemptions. So for 5 years, they paid 20% more than they should, and their cap was never capped because they didn't have homestead exemption. So this house has homestead exemption, but they've come in and their appraisal for 2017 is $486. So Kenny, being the great agent that he is, if you represent the buyer, if you represent the seller, it doesn't really matter, and I don't really know. Would go
You represented the seller.
The seller, okay. So this buyer's agent should contact them and say, look, I see you just got assessed at $486. You should take your closing statement for $450 and go down and protest your taxes, your taxable value, and try and get it reassessed at $450. Since Kenny didn't represent these people, he doesn't have to, but if he'd like to resell this house in the future, it might, or Mary Ann, might behoove him to contact them and say, look, your appraised value is significantly higher than what you just paid. And probably in 2017, you would be able to go and get your assessment back lower to $450, which would help you in the future. Your appraised value or market value can continue to escalate much rapidly to that, but it will cap your appraisal at 10% from that from next year. So that's whether Mary Ann and Kenny want to go and check that out. Let's go to the next one, 1325 Richelieu. So you just go down this list and you would check every house that you sold, and you're checking for these same things. You're checking, do they have homestead exemption? That's the number one thing, because they only have till April 30th to apply for their homestead exemption. Remember, these are houses that closed in 2016, so they own them January 1 of 2017. So these people, new people, have homestead exemption, and going down, they paid $399, and their new assessment is $354. Great. No one should do anything. They're perfect over here. So if we represented the buyer of that house, say the same thing. I saw today online that you had your homestead exemption. I see that your appraised value is $354. You're going to get this opportunity to fight your taxes. You do not want to do anything. You do not want to hire O'Connor and Associates, because you could go down to the protest hearing, and while they can lower your taxable value, they can raise your taxable value also until this is certified, which is not until the end of the summer. You don't want to do crap over there. You're going to let it alone, and they'll never catch you now. But if you go down and protest, they're going to get on MLS, and they're going to check and see what you just closed on, and they still could raise this value. So you don't want to do anything in this scenario, unless you want your taxes to go up. Next one is 1168 Beverly Hills. Is that in the city of Houston?
It's in Shady Acres.
Okay. 1168 Beasley Hills Lane. To just keep going through this little deal. Let's see how Beasley Lane does here. Beasley Hills Lane. Okay, so this is probably some sort of new construction. They have their homestead exemption, but we don't know the value yet, because was this new construction?
No, it's a resale.
It's a resale. Last year they were assessed at $405. So someone, if they don't have a value out yet, the only thing that must be done by April 30th is this homestead exemption. These values, there is still time. You have time to protest, because you can protest through June, July, and August. When you're notified, you have 30 days. So there's no April 30th deadline for this, but I would assume that, I bet this goes to 450 over here. And someone that just paid $375 will want to protest. But we just have to, you should just contact them and say, we represent the buyer?
We represented the seller.
Okay.
She did not use us to purchase it, and she had been trying to contest her taxes since she owned it because no one told her that she could do that.
So we were helping her contest things.
Gotcha. Okay. So it may come in for $375. Look, someone should just keep an eye on it. You might just contact them and say, hey, I noticed that today we're nearing the deadline for homestead exemption. You have your homestead exemption, but you don't have your value yet. Be on the lookout. You'll get a little index card from HCAD probably in the next 30 or 45 days, and you'll have a certain amount of time to protest the taxes. But did she go back and protest 2016?
I think she was protesting in 2016.
Yeah,
correct?
You still can. I mean, you can go back and protest 1 year back behind during this window. So it doesn't tell me if they're going to lower this or not, but they, you know, it doesn't
She
mean
bought
it's
new
not.
construction, so then they appraised it way higher than she purchased it for.
Gotcha.
So we were helping.
Let's do Kenny's new good friends at 834 West 20th. Were these the gutter people?
Yes.
Okay, let's just see what happens with these people.
How do you say that? They had a gutter
It's
issue.
telling your garbage people.
All right. We did represent these buyers, right?
Yes.
So they have their homestead exemption. Keep going down. We don't have, let's see, the value, they paid $350. Appears to be coming in at $314. Of course, you can see it's not certified, but all that's good. They shouldn't do anything. Just keep their mouth shut also.
I'm sure.
Okay, but understand the point. The point is go down your list. But I would, you know, if you're getting a listing, you know of a listing, or you know of someone that's going to sell, you might just go and check and make sure. You'd be surprised the number of people that do not have homestead exemption. Homestead exemption does a couple of things. It fixes your appraised value cap, which means you can only go up by 10%. I assure you, so 2015 is based on January 1. January 1, 2015, the values were rapidly rising. January 1, 2016, the values were not rising. So many people's taxable value has been reduced. If you look at my Morrison, it once was on at $1.9 million, it went down to $1.685 million. I mean, that's a pretty good reduction of adjustments based on January 1 of 2016. But I assure you, the headlines for 2017 are going to be 20% increases across the board. So everyone in 2018 is going to go up. The blanket appraisals of the city of Houston will be up by more than 10% next year in 2018 because the market's going to be up that strong. So you want to cap whatever number you can as quickly as you can so that even if the market goes up 20%, the appraisal purposes for taxes only will go up by 10% unless you pull a permit and do some other addition or renovation or something. Any questions about homestead exemption? We've gone over it a couple of times. This is just, that was to notify them on their proration. You're just checking to see if they have homestead exemption or not.
So if you protest online, they can still raise your valuation?
If you protest the deal, it means someone else is going to go look at it.
Okay.
Until they're certified, they can go up or they can go down.
Okay.
So if
So you
you,
think it's fair, though?
I believe I would not screw with the people.
All right.
If you think it's fair, I wouldn't mess with it. There are plenty of instances where they go up, not just down. So,
So if you do improvements, they can just raise the value?
yeah, so when you go and you pull a permit, you're required to put a dollar amount, so that's at least the starting point. So you go and renovate your kitchen, you go get a permit, you say the value is really $20,000 on your permit, even though it's probably really $100,000, you can just write $20,000. That's what people do. You know, so yes, they can go and raise the value, your 10% plus whatever your improvement was. So if you got a new garage, it could be 10% plus $30,000 for a garage. If you replace your windows, it would be 10% plus $10,000 for the replacement of the windows. So yes, 10% plus the improvement.
Why do they think that the improvements necessarily increase the value by the amount of the improvement?
It's just that's how they calculate it. You can fight the value and say, you know, but if it was worth something and you just added $10,000 of expenditures, they're going to assume that that was worth $10,000.
So if you do.
I mean, literally, when I fought mine and I protested, they pulled up the Google map, because I argued with them also, I had little photos, and they looked at the sand that had been delivered for my garage and added the value of the sand, okay, by the sand, okay? They can do that. I did buy sand and it was delivered and it's an improvement, and that's how they can do it. I mean, I kid you not, that's what they did to me. You know, so you got to be careful how it works. They're pretty sophisticated these days. Okay, questions about that? Moving onward. Okay, want to have a brief conversation about deed restrictions. We haven't talked about them in a while either. So this is a map of Woodland Heights. Okay, we're in Woodland Heights, and let's just assume that that's White Oak to 11th Street, Studewood to Houston Avenue here. Okay. In this little section, White Oak to 11th Street to Houston Avenue to Studewood, you see all these different subdivisions. Every one of these little subdivisions theoretically could have a different deed restriction. There's not one deed restriction for Woodland Heights. There's all these different deed restrictions that may or may not come into play. So, of course, this is the main section of Woodland Heights. These would all virtually have the same. This is telling me that something happened in here and someone has replatted these little areas. Same with Woodland Terrace here. So I'm not going to get too much of that because for the most part, these are about the same. I don't think there's significant differences. These are called blanket deed restrictions. When you go to the planning department and you replat something, you're creating a restriction, and that's how it's normally done. I create Cinco Ranch Section 78. I plat it over there and I put in some deed restrictions, and those are blanket deed restrictions that apply to everyone. What has happened is that in this section, which is the first 2 blocks after Studewood, so we call it the Norhill Addition, so it's the 1100 block and the 1000 blocks. So these 2 blocks right there, their deed restrictions were invalidated by the city. Their process that they used early on was deemed to be not proper. So they had to go back and redo these deed restrictions basically last year. And when they were doing it, you had an opt-in or opt-out provision of whether you wanted to be in the deed restrictions or not. So there's no longer any blanket deed restrictions here. You wouldn't know if a property was deed restricted or not on the surface of it anymore, as opposed to this. You go to Woodland Heights and I can tell that in the 900 block it has a set of deed restrictions. Here you're going to have, and you would hope that the Woodland Heights Association would come together and put a little map showing the deed restrictions of those that opted in and those that opted out. We have the little list over there. It's about 400 pages long of all the individual properties that I can flip through to see if your property is deed restricted or not. But you'd be surprised. When I look, about half of the properties are now no longer deed restricted, okay? Over half. But there is no map yet that shows us, although I'm hoping that they get it.
Where's White Oak Street on that map?
Right here, basically.
Okay,
Right
so
here.
I'm in Norhill Edition now.
You are.
And I opted out.
You opted out. David Rourke, I mean, you'd be surprised. The majority of people that I know opted out. Someone just didn't know. So you must have opted out, then you're out. If you did nothing, they opted you in. Okay? So if you didn't file an opt-out notice, notarized and sent to the county clerk's office, you were opted in. But it is very hit or miss here, okay, of how that works. So you wouldn't know. So you're going to have to get with me if you're overly concerned, or like I say, you need to just order the title commitment as quickly as you can to figure out if they're deed restricted. Kick over to the 900 block, we're talking about different. But it leads me back into Houston Heights. So if you go to Houston Heights, it's the same thing. So from this direction, basically to Shepherd, I-10 to 610, from Studewood to Shepherd, same thing. It was not platted that way that subdivision was. This section was its own city. It got annexed into the city of Houston in 1918. There were no blanket deed restrictions. It wasn't a subdivision, okay? It was a city. So each little individual property had to opt in. So we have a note of the deed restricted properties in the Heights Association, and you just have to look. And the main sections of Cortland and Columbia and Harvard, they're pretty well deed restricted. You know, you can go 1610, 1616, 1620, 1620. I mean, you can kind of go, and you would just have to log in and see if this is deed restricted. If there's a 1618 Arlington, it isn't deed restricted. If there's a 16...
That you know of.
That's right, that you know of. I mean, we're pretty good. I'll be honest with you, we're pretty good about knowing. Very few people opted in that we don't know about. If there's no deed restriction, I mean, but if they're on this list, they're deed restricted. We know these are deed restricted. There could be a new deed restriction, but I mean, that we know of. Pretty accurate. But you'll see Heights Boulevard has one property on all of Heights Boulevard. There's only one property on Heights that's deed restricted. Okay? The majority of these over here are not deed restricted. Okay? So I just want you to be aware this was an opt-in. Go to Norhill. Norhill was a platted subdivision, so it has blanket deed restrictions, you know. But it's very hard to kind of understand. There's not an easy system to figure out what's deed restricted or not. Any particular question?
So I sold a house, 834 West 20th Street to the gutter people.
Okay.
It is deed restricted.
What deed restrictions is it?
The Houston Heights Association minimum lot size.
No, okay, so that's not a deed restriction. These are deed restricted properties that says it must be 24 inches off the ground, it must be 3 feet on the side, it must be set back 10 feet. These are deed restrictions. This is not to be confused with prevailing lot size or minimum lot size. You have to go to another reference point because that's a City of Houston neighborhood block by block initiative. So there are minimum lot sizes. So you could take 707 East 9th Street, 75 feet wide, okay? It's not a deed restricted property. It's not on this list. But that block has minimum lot size of 6,600 square feet, okay? Minimum lot size.
So you
okay?
cannot divide it and sell it in pieces.
You cannot subdivide less than 6,600 square feet. So if you have 9,900 square feet, you could sell 3,300 square feet to your next door neighbor, you know, because that can be added to theirs. Their minimum lot size now becomes 9,900 square feet. Your estate's 6,600 square feet. You can't subdivide any lower than that. So we could go to City of Houston Planning.
Sure.
Show where you're at. Just show you where that list is. That's not a deed restriction. That's a minimum lot size or a minimum build line.
It reads deed restriction.
It's not deed restricted. So you can go to minimum lot size, minimum build line, and you can click on the little list up here. So what you're saying, West 20th Street?
Yeah, 834.
Okay. Did we get there? Okay, minimum lot size. It happens all the time. Most of Lindale, 80% of the near north side, we are making great efforts of going, Monty Beach over there, around Monty Beach. Okay, pretty good at having minimum lot size, okay? This is a pretty good little website. Let it get down a little bit too. You can see the map. Click. This is showing you in the city, I'll go back a little bit, back up just a little bit. This is showing you where we have minimum lot size applications in the city of Houston. One is an established deal, but once an application is made, it's pending and it can't be subdivided. Every week at the Planning Commission, a builder buys a lot, okay? The urban living sign goes up, whatever. The neighbors immediately go and file a petition, an application for minimum lot size, and if they don't have their permit, they're stuck because until it's voted on, the rule goes into play. So these are pending applications that will go before the deal. Here's Lindale. You can see all that little section already has established minimum lot size. Okay, here's this near north side. Here's most of the heights here. Here's your 20th Street applications, which are probably right here, Ken. Let's just see where you're at. Click over there. That direction, if it lets you.
This would be...
You got to keep on this direction. There is no Keep going. There is no minimum lot size on West 20th.
It's a deed restriction. I'm
What is the
telling you.
deed restriction?
I don't have my emails with me, but I promise you, it is a deed restriction.
You'd have to show it to me.
I'll have to show you.
Okay. All right. But while we're on minimum lot size, this is good.
So that's minimum lot size, then the lot lines.
Let's go back to your map there. Yeah, so the minimum lot lines are on here also, the minimum build lines. So you can have minimum build line and minimum lot size, okay? They're color coded. So the deed restriction in Houston Heights is probably 15 feet. The minimum build line on 9th Street and 7th Street down here, down a little bit. Okay, here's minimum lot sizes in these first block. Here's Studewood here, and they have minimum lot size and minimum build line, this little red stuff, in these blocks. Well, let's do this one. The 1200 block of Harvard. The deed restriction's 15 feet. That means the house has to be set back 15 feet. The minimum build line in the 1200 block of Harvard is 30 feet. Okay? When they applied in 1983, the build line, the average house was set back 30 feet. Okay? So we have 1248 Harvard right here. So I happen to know that this block, the build line is at 30 feet. This house, which is only set back 15 feet, it was there, wants to do an addition into the build line. They need a variance for the planning commission to add on 6 feet to their dining room in the build line. And there's a variance procedure for that application to go before the planning commission. It got deferred last week, so it'll be up again on Thursday or whatever. But this build line, if there's a vacant lot, is at 30 feet. You wouldn't know that unless you either pulled the title commandment or you check this website to see. But you can see Heights Boulevard doesn't have any of that. And this, the 1100 block doesn't have any minimum lot size. But if these houses were deed restricted, they'd be deed restricted to 15 feet. It gets very confusing between the minimum build line and the minimum lot size. Most of them. We don't have as many, people are not apt to do the build lines like they used to. They're now really just into minimum lot size, which is the prevailing.
So this map, will it tell you what the green or the red or whatever means, or it just says there is?
No, you got to go back to the matrix and log in. So if you put 1258 Harvard, there's a little spreadsheet. A little harder to get to. You can see it.
So you can't just put the address in and it
You
comes
can.
up
You can.
on the map.
You can. And it'll tell you what it is. It's a little harder to get to. There's spreadsheets. But they update it all the time. So you can do, how do we do it, Brandon? Put your,
Like Control F or
So put 1248 Harvard. You're quicker than I am. Just put 1200 Harvard. Or Harvard, you can pull up all over that too, but that's fine. It'll pull up all the things on Harvard at some point, maybe.
And there's to the 20,000 block of Harvard.
We just did this one. All right. This is another confusing one. Go to the little map on the 20 block. So they just made application in the 2000 block of Harvard. Let's go up here. This is very confusing also. You need to be an expert at this. Okay. The 20 block has made application and it was actually passed. So we have a minimum lot size now of 6,600 square feet from basically 20th Street to, I believe this is 22nd. Both sides of the block went in together. The only other thing to add, so this is for sale now. This was Clayton Lee Plumbing. This was a little music shop. Then there was a rent house here. If there were businesses there, they're grandfathered. Whatever business is there can be there. But if you ever change the status of the business, if you demolish it, you demolish a house, you have zoned yourself to residential now in these minimum lot sizes. So a business that was here, this is a business, wanted to buy the bungalow, tear down the bungalow and put a parking lot there. You can't do that. It created a new restriction of single-family residence on those lots. So you couldn't tear down the bungalow and create a parking lot for the law firm that wanted to go there. These houses can only be what they are or houses.
And so that is for the whole block, even though that plumbing guy probably didn't want it, correct?
That's right.
So what's the rule on voting?
The rule is over 70% automatic. If it's over 30% and no protest, it normally passes. If there's a protest, it must go before the planning commission and we vote. Now, and we have 1 or 2 every week at planning commission, where 10 want it and 1 doesn't. And we look at the common sense of it. If they're at 40% want it, it's been denied typically. I mean, we're not going to let 40% of the people rule what happens to the other 60%. The gray area is 50% want it, 40% don't say anything, and 1 guy protests. What are you going to do? And you'd be surprised the number of people that don't respond. So you must get to a certain level of affirmative, but it's really only 30%. And then we gauge the level of opposition. You gauge the level of opposition. If there's no stringent opposition, so last week we had one, it was 50% said yes. The rest didn't say anything except 1 said no. But these 2 people showed up and said, look, I meant to say yes, I just didn't do it. When those 2 people said yes, and we're talking about a smaller, this was in Montrose, then 70% of the people wanted it and 1 didn't. We just voted for that. I mean, 70% generally is going to win. But it's truly just, you can go before the planning commission every other Thursday and talk about it. Yes?
Okay, so 201 is a Delco battery shop.
Okay.
2016, it's been for sale forever. It's a new construction, Renovo.
Yep.
So can that Delco battery, can that become a restaurant?
Sure can.
So it can become.
If it's commercial now, it can stay commercial. If you tear it down, it's going to be residential. But if it's commercial now, the use, as long as the use, it can't stay the same. But if you tear it down, then that's no longer the same use. Parking lot's not the same use. You couldn't, if a restaurant went here and they wanted to tear down that commercial building and put a parking lot, no, a parking lot is a different class from the commercial building. But yes, that can be a restaurant.
But they can rebuild something else.
Sure they can.
Okay.
Sure
That's
they can.
commercial?
That's commercial.
It could be a house with a foundation that's not built yet, with lines.
Right.
So it takes 30% of your block to initiate.
It only takes 10% to initiate.
Okay.
It takes 10% to initiate. Minimum lot size or minimum build plan. We encourage people, I'm a huge proponent of minimum in established neighborhoods before the townhouse developer buys this and puts 6 units there in the middle. Before that happens, if there's all the same type of properties, little bungalows or ranch style house or whatever, I believe it's in everyone's best interest to get minimum lot size. Okay? If it's half and half already, I think the ship already sailed on that
You
deal.
say 30% is a majority?
30, if there were, it takes 10% per application, what he said. If there were 30% of the people that said yes, and they'll mail out to everyone in the block, they put up the sign on 30%, so no protest. 30% said yes, that would get approved. Because the assumption, the city gauges the level of protest. The assumption is nobody protested, nobody cares. So remember, only 10% of the people vote in these elections, so if they get to 30%, that's pretty good. If 1 person protests and 30% of the people said yes, and 1 said no, the likelihood is that that would have passed. They gauge the level of protest. They're not at a clear majority in that scenario. It could pass, but it hasn't passed since I've been there. So minimum build line, it'll turn green.
then some
I mean, that's
lots,
lot size.
I'm sorry.
No, no.
So some lots have minimum setbacks that aren't
That's the build
necessarily
line.
going to be on that
Nope.
unless there's a minimum build, this map.
This is a set, build line means setback.
Okay, right, but if it, so for example, on 23rd Street, oops, I don't think 23rd Street has a minimum lot size, but it has a minimum.
Okay, we can go to 23rd Street. So 23rd Street, the likelihood is that it doesn't have any deed restrictions. Okay, here's another lesson. By code in the city of Houston, there is a build line. In chapter 42 of our development code, if there's no deed restriction here, the minimum build line is 10 feet. The city doesn't let you build at 0 feet without a variance. Here's another funny thing. Okay, so the minimum build line is 10 feet in a residential. All of these build lines are determined by the size of the street. So we're assuming that this is a residential street and that it's either 40 or 50 feet of right of way. You can tell on your survey. Okay, but if we got to Yale, which is a major thoroughfare, the minimum build line is 25 feet on a major thoroughfare. Heights Boulevard, Yale, Pecor. Okay, so this residential guy would probably not get a variance to be at 0 feet. Bernie's Burger Bus, who wants to build into the build line, would go to the planning commission and they would apply for a variance. The reigning thought today is to, yes, we want to push the building as close as we can to Yale, leaving about a 15-foot, we measure from the back of the curb. So the back of the curb, then there's some little grass, then there's a sidewalk, and then there's a property line. If we can get to 15 feet, we'll let Bernie's Burger Bus push that building closer to the street, because we would rather have the building at the front and parking at the back and a little canopy and restaurant and tables and chairs, increasing the walkability along Yale, okay? By pushing the building further back and having parking at the front when people back up and pull in, that's not pedestrian friendly. That's not making it more walkable. Pushing the buildings closer does two things. Slows the traffic. Inherently, traffic goes slower the closer the buildings are. Just think, you're paying more attention when things are closer to you. So we design roads to go 70 miles per hour, and then we ask people to go 25 miles per hour. They're not going to go 25 miles per hour naturally. They're naturally going to go fast. So the city's initiative can be to push the buildings closer and slowing the traffic down, increasing the walkability by making the little cafe at the front, not the strip center like Blockbuster or Walgreens where there's parking in front. We don't want that. We want restaurants, and we want yoga shops, and we want ice cream shops where people can walk to them. So you would almost, today, if you just played your card right, you would almost automatically get a variance to build 5 feet, which is 20 feet into the build line of commercial, but not residential. So there's a natural building code that sets the setback if it's not established by some other means. Minimum build line or a deed restriction.
Okay, so if it has minimum lot, it can have minimum build line, but not minimum lot size.
Sure it can.
And that would still be on that map.
Yeah, the townhouses in Shady Acres might have a minimum build line of 15 feet, but it still doesn't mean you can't put 6 townhouses back behind there. They just couldn't build the townhouse in the first 15 feet. They could get a variance to put the parking into the first 15 feet.
Okay, and so what are the obscure things on Petty? There's some obscure thing about Petty.
The obscure thing about Petty is that in Ridgewood and those sections, they were automatically added into the Heights Association deed restrictions. I'm telling you that they were.
Okay.
I haven't taken up Michelle's yet argument because we don't represent the buyer, but they are deed
Well,
restricted.
I
At the
just
bottom,
didn't know where to look,
all of
so.
these properties go down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down.
Wait, you looking at this one?
No, I'm just telling you all the way, I don't care what, all these areas that were in, you know, Bradshaw and Ridgewood got added into the deed restrictions. So you're not seeing in here are these additional properties that were added into the deed restrictions.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good enough for me.
Uh-huh. So there are 111 properties that are not reflected up here. They had blanket deed restrictions in Ridgewood. It wasn't, that came after, that was not in the city of Houston Heights. It was a platted subdivision, so we added their deed restrictions into ours when we did our election. So, okay, well, these were interesting conversations. All right, so while we're on that minimum lot size, minimum build line, any of those sort of things, because I happen to be here.
Minimum build line is the same thing as setback, right?
That's correct. You'd be surprised the number of surveys that are wrong. I mean, I've gone over this before, but every week someone comes down to the planning commission and they have a survey, and it said they used the guy's survey from 10 years ago that said the setback was 15 feet. They designed their house, they pour their piers, they put the first floor up, they get red tagged by the city because the neighbor's the first one to turn them in, and they go push the house back 7 more feet. Happens, I'm telling you, it happens every week. Every week. And they're not going to get an exception to that.
Doesn't Garden Oaks have a uniform setback?
They probably have a blanket deed restriction.
25 feet or something.
Yeah, it's dependent on the section. Because they're seeing more and more and more of these minimum lot size. Like I said, we haven't had minimum build lines in this year. There hasn't been an application for a minimum build line lately. There hasn't been one in 2016 or 2017. Minimum lot size all the time. In Montrose especially. Good. Go back to your map, the bigger map. You're doing pretty good. So we just did the area by the Museum of Fine Arts over there. Keep going. And so here's all these sections in Montrose. That's pretty good. We're doing pretty good over here. We just got, a lot of these are deed restricted already. This little section, this was the largest application we just had. This is the Museum of Fine Arts and the glass cell and all this sort of stuff. Now, here's what's funny about this. The overwhelming majority, the minimum lot size was 5,000. That was their application. That was what they were platted. 65% of this is already less than 5,000. Okay? The average lot size in here was about 2375. Okay? Which I didn't vote for this application. I got overruled, but and I wasn't passionate about it. But I mean, it was one of those things I didn't think. And this already had minimum lot size, but they could use this minimum lot size to grow their minimum lot size area. So these people who were already restricted came down and said, vote for it. And all these little subdivided people said, come down and vote for it. None of these people were impacted. Not one of them were impacted. They already had either a minimum or they already had minimum lot size. It was a political discussion. I did not support it. But
when they sell, then they're restricted.
so if you have 3,000 square feet and their minimum lot size is established at 5,000, it doesn't impact you. You can't subdivide anymore anyway, really.
Or you can sell, right?
You can sell just fine. But if you have, let's say you have a 9,000 square foot lot in minimum lot size where it's 5,000, you're stuck with your 9,000. You can only take your 4,000 and sell it to your next door neighbor. That's the only place you could sell it.
So in 20 years, if somebody wants to take that house down.
These deed restrictions these minimum lot size or minimum build lines only last 20 years also. I forgot to point that out. When you do a block like this, it lasts 20 years. When you do a super block, it lasts 30 years. Many of these deals are now coming upon the 20-year mark. There was a big rash of movement of this in the early 2000s. So you're going to start seeing a couple of things happen. The one lot is going to go in and become a super block. Okay, that way we can get 30-year restrictions, or they're going to have to go back and gauge it again and see if they like it or not.
But you can't if you tear your house down now.
You can build a
you're
house.
on 30, and then you're on, but you can build it back.
Sure you
on
can.
that smaller lot.
Sure you can. We're not restricted yet. It's very confusing. People every week come down and ask that question. Yes, whatever. If you're less than the 5,000, you can do whatever you want except subdivide your property. You can't sell off a foot. You can't get any less than what you are. Okay?
And they do that to prevent from
They don't want townhouses. It's a drainage issue. The number one thing people talk about is drainage. They don't want more flooding on their street. They certainly don't want to live in a bungalow and have 3-story townhouses 3 feet from them or whatever. And yeah, so it's just a density. There's no all-street parking when they put in 6 townhouses on Kipling Street or whatever. So
But
the
they
streets,
can build high rises.
if the minimum lot size was 5,000 and a high-rise acquired 8 lots and had 40,000 square feet, sure, you could build a high-rise there. You could. There's nothing that stops that, just stops the subdivision. All that's really stopping is the subdivision. There's many apartment complexes in this little deal already. What else is interesting about this while we're here? Questions? Minimum lot size, minimum build line, deed restrictions, opting in. I want you to have a little feel for all that. That doesn't mean that all these areas aren't deed restricted or that there's not a historic district. So remember, if we're in this section right here, this is a historic district. You can't tear any of these houses down, you know, but that's another whole layer that comes over here. And this is a historic district over here, you know, in this little section of Boulevard Oaks. This is a historic district. Don't have too many. Avondale's a historic district, so you have another layer of restrictions on here also.
So what about the Ashby high-rise that's been trying to go in? And I heard
It's
about-
going in. I mean, it's going in. It's just a function of economic count. It's right over here, Sunset. It's this direction. Here's Bissonnette, and here is the Ashby high-rise right here. And this is the vacant tract of land that was the apartment complexes.
I heard that now it's because of the curb cuts that they're trying to restrict it.
There's nothing, from the city of Houston's perspective of what they've submitted for permitting, there's nothing to stop them from starting tomorrow. I'm telling you, the only thing that stops them from starting tomorrow is the economics of their project. There's nothing, no holdup at permitting. No holdup at all. Nothing that stops them from doing it. If they wanted to start tomorrow, they could. There's nothing anyone could do to stop them. Now, subsequent to the Ashby high-rise, they already have a permit. There are new rules that limit how that can work, how far you have to now be from some of these residences, but there's nothing that stops the Ashby high-rise. But there are new rules. The tract of land that's vacant that the Spins own at Meshaw, there are new high-rise rules that have gone into play in the last 18 months that stop high-rises from the middle of residential neighborhoods. You step back so much further that it makes it more cumbersome to do so.
Are they reselling?
No, they're currently rental units. They're not selling. They're not for sale.
So on some of these lots, like in the Heights, do you get a vote per lot you have?
For the deed restriction,
Yes.
it's totally opting in. The homeowner must opt in.
For like one of these applications, for like a minimum build line, do you get a vote per lot you want?
Yes, you do.
on that lot?
Yeah. So yes, if 10% of the property owners must make application, then it must qualify. You're gauging what is the minimum lot size. And then yes, everyone gets 30 days to vote. They put the little sign up here and the sign up there. They mail to everyone. They mail, I think, 400 feet around so that you know what's happening. Automatically, they're mailing to who's on each kind. And then you have so much time to send your vote in yes or your vote no. Now, most people don't send their vote in no. Most, so like you say, you get, if there's 12 lots here and 4 go and say yes, and the other 8 don't do anything, it's really only 33% or something. The likelihood is that that would pass, because no one protested. If 4 of them said yes and 2 said no, that would probably get denied. Just the level of protest, they didn't quite get there. You would think they would have to get to, if they get to 50% and no protest, it's automatic. Doesn't even have to go to the planning commission. It's automatic. But if it's at 60% and there's a protest, it still comes to the planning commission. And then we can gauge and ask questions what's going on. Okay. Is that interesting, Bob?
It's very interesting.
Okay. What else? What time is it?
It's 10:47.
10:47. Yeah, I guess what we want to talk about a little bit is floor time and how that's working. We just want a little update on this floor time stuff because we're going to promote more leads to floor time. We're doing a couple things. We're taking my 35 listings that I have, fixing to get more, changing all my signs to get rid of my cell phone number. I don't want those calls. We're going to route them all to Selena over here, who's going to send them to floor time. Okay? I don't want those leads anymore. I don't even want the phone calls. So that's not the only thing that we're doing, but we're going to try and promote more phone calls to the floor time. So how it works in general, the last sales meeting of the Tuesday of the month, you can sign up for the following month, okay? So the last Tuesday in April, you can sign up for the next month. From that Tuesday to the end of the month, you're limited to 3 times per week, okay? At the first, we can fill in whatever you want. If Becky wants to sign up for the whole day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., if nobody else has chosen it, I'd rather have someone than no one, okay? So I'm giving everyone a fair chance from the last Tuesday of the month to the first. Okay, this is a typical month. So here's all these days people can go and sign up for floor time. And you can sign up here or you can sign up at the Kirby office. If the calls from a property at Memorial Drive or that direction, we're going to first try the Kirby office. Okay? We're going to see if anybody signed up at Kirby. If they're not, if no one signed up at Kirby, of course they're going to come here. If the calls from Memorial Drive this direction, it's going to come to the Heights. And the majority of the listings, let's be clear, are from Memorial Drive this direction. But if someone calls on Bel Air and there's someone at the Westview office, we're going to route to the Westview office or whatever. So you still sign up for these 2 shifts or whatever. Let's just say we get a call at 3 o'clock on this day, whatever day, and there's no one's on sign up for floor time. Someone signed up from 9 to 11, someone signed up from 11 to 1, but nobody signed from 1 to 3, and someone signed up here. So there's a vacancy here, and the call comes in, what are we going to do? And it's kind of our dilemma. In general, if someone's sitting here, we're going to ask the person here. I mean, I can't go back and call someone else because we're going to lose the lead. So if no one signed up for floor time, and it's called from Kirby, we're going to go and ask, if someone's sitting at Kirby, we're going to give that person there, or if someone's over here, we're going to give them to the person here. If no one's here, we have to do something. The first thing we're going to do is go back to the person who was just here before. Okay? That's the first thing we're going to do. So Kenny had signed up from here, and we get a call at 2 o'clock, and no one is sitting here, we're going to go back to Kenny. Because at least Kenny made the effort to sit here for 2 hours. And so we're going to try and reward him. Now, if Kenny went to, we call Kenny had a lead from floor time, and he's showing a house now, because that's why he wasn't on floor time, then, at some point, we're just going to go find somebody else. Our first effort is going to be whoever the previous person was. Same thing, you get a call at 6 o'clock, and if someone was signed up at this period, we're going to give it to them. Seem fair? Yeah.
Yes.
Clear? Are we clear how it's working over here?
now we
But you
finally,
change the hours.
we changed the hours.
You change the blocks, the times are different.
Yeah, we just
We added.
5 to 7.
We just added this one because we were already sitting here till 6:30 anyway, basically. Yeah, so we added this whole block here. That's all we really did.
And now I know, because I get confused, we now put in this policy on above the little calendar, go to view usage policy.
It's telling you exactly how it works here again. You sign up on Back Agent. From the first of the month, you can sign up for 3 2-hour shifts a week. After the first, fill in at will. I don't care. I'd rather have someone here than not someone here. So if you're gonna sit here, you're gonna sign up for the whole day, you just sign up for the whole day. I don't care. After the first.
Currently, we're not doing great for this week.
Yeah, we haven't pushed it enough, I think. But
Is it all in effect already? All your numbers are all the same?
no, they will be by the first. We've ordered the riders, and we're going to change them all out as quickly as we can here.
So after the first, we can do 3 hours and we switch it.
No, after the first, you can fill in at will.
As long as you show up.
Yeah, you have to show up. Yeah, so you're limited only in the week before the sign up to give everyone a chance. You can sign up for 3 times a week in this week. This is the week here, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, yeah, this is the week. So you can sign up for 3 shifts for this week. After the first, you can sign up all you want.
This is important too. So this alternate list, how we've used that in the past, that has sort of never worked, is that if we get a lead and nobody's in the office and nobody's been signed up all, month like this, then we would send it to those people who are on the alternates list. But there's a couple of reasons that doesn't work, is because there's no way to know, like, if we're
Who we
sending
call
all who we call last,
I know
or they pick up. So that's not the intent of this alternates list. And that's not the way it'll work to use it anymore. What this is really for is, let's say Jenny signed up for a shift today, like 1 to 3, or let's say she signed up 3 to 5:30, and then she cancels that, then it automatically emails those people, hey, this shift later on today became available.
Those are people who generally sign up for floor time or have expressed interest in floor time.
They've actually said, I want to be an alternate.
I want to be an alternate to
Right.
fill this floor time, not to get a lead if nobody else is available. There's just no way
To
that
fill the
works.
floor time.
So yeah,
So if you want to do floor time, the first thing you want to do is sign up as an alternate.
exactly.
Next, you want to go in and fill it in here.
Yeah.
But let's be clear, number 1 policy is the receptionist asks the phone, if you're calling on your listing, you're going to get your lead.
Oh yeah.
We're not going to take your lead and route it to floor time. I mean, so we're very proprietary about your leads going to you, all that sort of stuff.
It's your list.
Except my listings.
And I'm
My listings,
already
I
started
don't want
changing out
those.
your signs with mine.
There you go. And in some cases, and people should let us know too, if like you have a $900 lease and you just know you don't want to get any of those, you're going to ignore the emails, you don't want us to be at the calls, I think that people should just let us know and we'll follow the same policy. But we'll only do that
If you tell us, I don't want to
like
do this.
Susan, I don't want
Susan doesn't, she can't show her, she's not capable of showing her lease leads, so she wants to give those to someone else. She can still represent the seller. She knows her friend who owns banks, but she can't go show it for the tenant or show the tenant something else. If someone wants those leads, she wants to give those leads away. So,
And I have a question,
Yes.
because I want to put it out there that, so when somebody signs up for floor time and they do not show up, what do we do with calls and that, or walk-ins with
Well, I mean, if-
something like that?
if it's 9:05, go back to your list. Show me a list. If it's 9:05 and Mark signed up, we're going to call Mark. Say, Mark, you're signing up for floor time. I know you're probably on your way. We're going to give Mark the benefit of the doubt that he's in traffic or whatever. So if there's someone signed up, back to your list. She's asking, is someone signed up and they're not here? What are we doing with that
I've
lead?
had a case where we have a walk-in and the person that signs up for floor time is not
Yeah.
here.
So let's assume it's right here. It is Tuesday the 18th and it's 9:10 and someone walks in, you're going to call Mark. Mark, you're signed up for floor time, we have a lead. If Mark says, I'm going to have to hop in the shower because I just got through running and Amanda's right here, we're going to give that lead to Amanda if she wants it. The people are not going to wait 30 minutes for Mark to get here. I mean, we're going to start with Mark because he made the effort to sign up, and we're going to applaud him, and we're going to assume he's on his way. If it's 10 o'clock, we would have probably already called Mark and said, Mark, I see you're signed up for floor time. It's 9:16. We're going to give him a 15-minute break. Let's just say that. Are you going to come in or not? And if you're not, I'm going to take your name off. Freeing up, so now someone walks in, we're going to ask the people here first, because they're sitting here, right? I mean, that just seems like the fairest thing to do.
Right.
And if nobody wants them, then we're going to go back to the person before, and nobody wants that person, we're going to go to that alternate list, right?
What happens if Mark keeps being a perpetual?
Mark, we're going to take Mark off.
Using you?
We're going to take Mark off.
So
Say,
Mark's
Mark,
gonna be
quit
able to-
signing up, you're keeping other people. Right.
Well, we're just using Mark as is.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, it was Brandon, same thing.
Yeah. So Brandon never shows up for floor time.
Then we're gonna say, Brandon, please don't sign up for floor time anymore. You really don't want floor time. You wanna be an alternate that we call, but you don't really wanna be responsible for signing up. Of course you're signing up in it. I mean, some firms wait every week and do this. We don't have the energy to mess with that. And so if Jenny has a closing right here, and she doesn't even know about that until here, that it got bumped from here to here. Well, of course she's gonna miss that, and she can say, Selena, sorry, I'm gonna have a closing here, I'm not gonna be here. Let's just go ahead and take my name off, free that up for someone else.
Or do you have a showing or a call?
That's right, I mean, those things happen. There's no doubt in our industry that happens. You just gotta go on there and click the little button and take your name right off. That frees it up for somebody else.
So once again, your signs are gonna have,
My signs are gonna go to 713-862-1600.
and there was another thing you said, there was another deal that was gonna.
Well, I mean, we're still trying to get some more internet leads in general that we're gonna try and route also to the floor plan. I mean, when we advertise a house, same thing. If we advertise your listing, we're gonna put your phone number. I don't want them to call Selena and then transfer to you. I want them to call you. I don't need them to go to Selena. On my listings, the same thing. We're not gonna put my cell phone on there. We advertise my listing. We don't tend to advertise my listings. You can advertise my listings. I tend to send a message. I don't tend to put a house on there. But if I did, I'm not gonna put my phone number on there. I'm gonna put an office number on there. So if I'm gonna list this $3.15 million house in Memorial, I may be forced to go advertise that house somewhere. My seller is probably going to make me go somewhere, whether that's Paper City, the Wall Street Journal, I don't know. And I'm not gonna put my cell phone number on that.
Oh.
I'm gonna route it here, they can go to you, you can show it, I'll represent the seller, you represent the buyer, and win, win, win. I don't wanna mess with those buyers. I don't have the energy or the time to mess with them. There you go. I mean, yeah.
I got the time.
Right. So some of those more expensive listings, I'm gonna be forced to probably, we're looking at, at some point, we're gonna have to pick up these Chronicle ads. I do not think we get anything from the Chronicle ads, but the sellers demand some of these Chronicle ads. I'm a realist of what you're just having to do. Sometimes we're just having to do it because we have to do it. That's right.
What's going on with that $500 thing you were talking about a couple of weeks ago?
So those Zillow leads we've met, we've identified 4 of 6 people. If you were interested, route up and visit with Aaron immediately. We are starting on May 1st. And the way that works, people that sign up, they're paying $500. I'm paying $5,500, and 5 people are paying $2,500. So I'm already subsidizing $3,000 a month to generate some leads from people over here. And they will call 3 people simultaneously and see who answers the phone the most. And then the next time they're gonna call the other 3 people, and they're gonna rotate those leads. We're gonna see how it works. We've committed basically to 6 months to see how it works. So let's be real honest. I'm going to pay $18,000 of Boulevard Realty money to see if this works. If I don't make $18,000 back, I'm not going to do it anymore. We'll be able to tell real quick if we get a lead from something that we wouldn't normally get. We're playing defense a little also because you're keeping Martha Turner from getting a lead on our listings. So half of it is defense, half of it is, but you want to pay for itself. I want to make $36,000, but that means the agents are having, they have to make. But if we get a lead for $300,000 and an agent sells one for $600,000, they make $6,000 and I make $3,000. The agent paid $500, and they made money and I lost money. So we have to do it more than once for it to be worth my while. So we're starting May 1. We're going to see how it works. Okie dokie? Yeah, sure.
Is there anything going on with the hysterical guidelines between now and blah, blah, blah?
20th, just go to a calendar. June 20th, just click here just so I can make sure I'm telling you the right date. The design guidelines will kick out in about 2 weeks, the first draft. It will kick out and there will be a meeting on June 20th. It's Tuesday at the fire station where we'll be discussing them. And the city staff will be here and we will be discussing how the design guideline draft works. This impacts predominantly Woodland Heights, Freeland, Heights East, West, and South. We won't discuss the whole 6th Ward or anything. We'll just discuss the ones that impact the Heights first. So that's the next meeting. When they kick out, I'll make my comments about it and I'll be happy to share my comments with whatever. I am not going to lead the fight against this thing.
Nothing's happening.
Yeah,
they're just working on it.
they're gonna prepare the draft. It's gonna say this right here.
But nobody can still speak out on it like today.
They will be able to starting on June 1st. When the draft comes out in May, the comment period will start for the month of June, yes. We just happen to have a meeting set already, we went ahead and set it right then. So we're waiting for the draft to come out. And what is it gonna say? It's gonna say, it's gonna be specific. The ridge height can't be more than 30, it's gonna say, so here's an example. This is what my passage. It's gonna say in Woodland Heights, the side setback must be the 15 feet, which is the total of 5, minimum of 5. Setback's 15 feet, minimum of 5, okay? There is no house that I have found yet on a 5,000 square foot lot in Woodland Heights that meets that current criteria. There's not one. It works in the 75 foot lot, but you can't find me a house in the historic district on a 5,000. So I'm going to go to my city council member and I'm going to say they want to impose in the design guideline a restriction that's stricter than my deed restrictions, that's not normal for Woodland Heights. And I don't think that should be in the design guideline. If the average house on a 5,000 square foot lot is set back 3 and 10, then I want 3. I want the ability to go down to 3. I will tell you many of them are on the 5,000 square foot lots are much less than 3, even though the deed restrictions say 3. What's actually there, there's not any that's 5. So why would the design guideline want to say 5? So someone in Woodland Heights is going to have to go and make that charge. I will provide the information, and someone over there is going to need to go protest and say, no, that's not right. It shouldn't say that. So that will be the comment portion there. Show me where one's that way. So that would be, it'll say the ridge height's no more than 34 feet or whatever. We're going to go over there and I can take Balin from 900 to 200. I can go measure the ridge heights and say, look, the average ridge height is 38. Why are you saying it has to be 34? It doesn't make common sense. Someone's going to have to do a little bit of that work. That process will last all summer. There's comments, and then it'll start going before the HHC will have a hearing. Then it'll go somewhere else, and then it'll go to city council in this fall. Yep. Good question. Any other comments? Yes.
Just a question on the design guidelines. So the idea is, are they trying to make any new construction, even though it matched architectural styles, but that should be subservient to existing conforming structures?
No, it doesn't have, it has to be, no, it doesn't have to be subordinate. The addition must be subordinate. New construction must meet the context area and all the context of the contributing structures on that block face, okay, on that block face. So if you could find a bunch of contributing structures of 2-story structures, then it could be 2 stories. But when it's all 1 story, the only bungalows are the contributing structures on the context block face, and you want to go build a 2-story house, they're going to say, no, you can't build a 2-story house. You have to build a 1-story house because that's the context area. So that's how they're going to get you.
And hence our lot next to ours will stay a lot for a long time.
I would certainly think so, unless that goes away.
Just gonna have to keep mowing it. All right, but it could be worse because on that, we're on a 5,000 square foot lot in Woodland Heights and nothing, and with then whatever you're talking about setbacks, it could be worse than everybody else on the block.
It will be worse than everybody else.
Because
it will be unlike anyone else on the block.
So it doesn't matter that everything on the block you can't make it the same as everything on the block. It has,
the more restrictive of the design guidelines and the ordinance, which can't invalidate a deed restriction. So everyone wants 5 and 10, and that's what it'll be, I guess. Someone's going to have to protest. There are better discussions. There were some better discussions about maybe allowing more encroachment onto the house, and I'll be curious to see if they say that. Right now, they're only approving at 100%. We used to allow you could start at the 70%. If you could start back at the 70%, that would be good. Just kind of have to see where we're going with that.
Well, it doesn't really matter at this point because you can't add that much house to it anyways.
If they did away with that deal and in the design guidelines it said it's perfectly fine, let's just say this is my bungalow on the lot, it's perfectly fine, and this is what I think all of us would like, to just double the size of our house. The roof is not original. The roof is not original. So if we double the size of the house, we could take a 1,200 square foot bungalow, we could make it 2,400 square feet, and we could still have a backyard. We wouldn't bloom over our neighbors. Right now, you can't do that. So they added on to the White House. Y'all know that, right? I mean, so right now you can do this, but when you do this, there's no backyard. Well, you can't even do that. You can do this, you know, but that, what does that get you?
Well, I mean, it's a Colorado company, right? There's a district in Colorado that lets you do that, makes it look like.
If the neighborhood
old
will
two-story
protest and speak up, then that's what the design guidelines will say. You just have to have a large number of the neighbors that say that. But there's this apathy. I bet you don't get 10% of the people.
I don't know if it's
Well,
so
we
much
want
apathy
it.
or they just don't understand it.
They don't understand, but we can try and educate them more. I mean, I'm going to do some education. I can educate. I'm just not going to lead a battle. So I'm going to educate the people, especially in Woodland Heights.
But I want a HEB.
Get you one. I'll get you one. You're going to have multiple.
When I order my groceries, I want not to have to drive so far.
They'll deliver them for you.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'm around.